a few guys that I thought were spot on. Like last year, a guy like Squidge Rugby. I enjoy him, for example.
There's a phrase in rugby. It's both celebratory and apologetic. One that accounts for how wildly malleable the sport is. How the game can spin in seconds from entertaining offloading chuckabout to tense tactical smash-up. It's a phrase that exists for days on which it gets stuck in one of those rather than the other. The phrase is one for the purists. And there wasn't a better way to describe what we saw in the first test of 2021's Lions series, as Warren Gatland's plucky bunch of strangers came back from 12-3 down to win against Jaco Johan and his crack team of world champions. It was a game filled with more incident than flow, more points to discuss than points being scored. It was one very much for the purists. A game the rugby diehards will love, whilst the casual viewers have to text their uncle to ask, what is a ruck? So, it's time for this particular purist to answer those questions and many, many more. How did the Lions roar back to take a 1-0 lead in the series, and what, if anything, do South Africa need to fix ahead of next weekend, and how quickly can I convert those of you who've never downloaded the World Rugby Laws of the Game app into purists ahead of an inevitably even tenser second test next week? By the time the hooter went, it felt already like we'd watched two tests be played. The Springboks convincing wins the first and the Lions steamrollering the second. That opening half was somewhat bizarre. The last month and a bit has essentially been a lengthy shadow boxing session where the Lions have tried to hide how they're going to play and the Springboks tried to remember how they play, and both teams carried elements of their respective lead-ins over to the real big boy test. There were errors of both skill and judgment and real caginess in the opening chapters, both teams finding their feet, most likely to then box kick with them. However, whilst both teams took time to settle, the Lions did bound into class like the dickhead kid who always took ages on his homework and didn't want to risk the teachers not seeing it, so brought it up at the start of every class. The Springboks love a line out and as such are always very happy to kick the touch, so Dan Biggar pumps it right down into the right hand corner of the 22. Faf de Klerk is left footed and this makes it a more difficult kick for him than on the other touchline. On his correct side he'd probably be hitting it to about here, but as it is on the right it's more like, well, here. This gives the Lions prime opportunity to attack. So they throw the ball at the tail, the best ball to get a backline moving, and Price wrapped around. It looks like a fancy move. Erasmus has previously said he'd been back and studied the last time they played Scotland, who contributed both the Lions' attack and defence coaches, and they pulled this kind of flashy bullshit on 6 of their first 8 attacking opportunities, just always going for fancy set plays, always trying something silly and new. The Boks are ready, rushing up to stop a complex move, and then it just goes in the air. In and around the 22, Villy LaRue usually defends about here, on the wing to cover for a cross kick, whilst a blindside winger tracks in behind in case of chip, in this case it's Colby. LaRue is out wide, Colby tracking in behind, and then nothing flashy happens. Dan Biggar hangs it high, trying to exploit Colby's role. He's forced to backtrack, which is an absolute nightmare when taking any high ball. Never mind when you have Duan van der Merwe, who's basically a very fast giraffe with abs, trying to breathe down your neck, but your neck is too low that he can't actually reach that far. But this was kind of rare in the first half, because generally, South Africa managed to control that game through their kicking far better. The Springboks enjoy marching you backwards as much as marching themselves forward, and they achieved that with these low kicks. Faf de Klerk once again hitting the blind spot the Lions are keeping behind their defence near the try line, this kind of space behind Watson. The two teams essentially entered the game with the same kicking strategy, to find space and force the opposition back, but South Africa was so much better at it, so good it created one-off exceptions. This shouldn't be a contestable kick, it's one to push the Lions back, but Colby's so quick and his skill's so good, the Boks win it back. Their kicking was brilliant in that first half. The Lions had far less luck kicking long, but a couple of exceptions to their kicking plan allowed them to set a new rule for the second half. A curry chaser sounds like the kind of thing that would give you the worst hangover shit of your life, but it was an incredibly effective tactic for the Lions. Instead of sending up a winger first, from kicks down the wing, the Lions let Tom Curry lead the chase, with Duan van der Merwe going as a sidekick. No winger is throwing Andre Pollard into touch, but one of the most physical open sides in Europe might be able to manage it. This is a superb kick by Ali Price, and probably the most effective moment of the first half by the Lions, and it prompted a shift in tactics at half time. Virtually everything became chaseable, contestable. They could get someone under it or on top of it easily. This included clearances from the 22, looking to put Curry and van der Merwe after it instead of looking long or for touch. Ali Price kicked brilliantly all game, and here he targets Quagga Smith by doing just what they did to Colby minute 1. The ball goes over his head to a small blind spot and he's forced to turn to take it. Smith has his back turned to and then removed by Tom Curry, who clatters into him and gives Van der Merwe the cleanest breakdown target imaginable. This grants him the penalty that leads directly to the Lions' try a few minutes later. And then, after the kickoff following that, they do exactly the same thing but in a slightly different manner. They fire it longer, so Van der Merwe, the quicker man, chases, but again, it's just over Smith's shoulder. He has to backtrack onto the ball and it opens a huge target on his chest for Duan to crunch into. Curry, this time, is the one following up, entering the breakdown, rolls reverse, and he almost manages to pinch it. And here, they change roles almost entirely. After a few kicks over Quagga's shoulder, instead they put it far in front, close enough that Van der Merwe and Curry can both get under it and tap it back into the 60-metre long arms of Courtney Laws. The Lions just targeted Smith over and over again, kicking to him constantly and sending it forward into his face to smash him over and over a lot of times. The Springboks have the most physically dominant pack in the world, so the Lions identified the weakest link, not a weak link, but the weakest, the physically smallest, and sent their physically biggest at him constantly. Following up here are a man who hits uncannily with the exact force of a sack containing every spud in Wexford, Tyg Furlong, Courtney Laws, who played with such fury you'd think Razzie Erasmus signed up to Jeremy Corbyn's mailing list, and Rory Sutherland, a guy who you can just tell by looking at him has at least twice beaten up someone who was just in Edinburgh for the Fringe because he didn't like the cut of their jib. Sutherland gets the honour of folding him, but the Lions gave themselves plenty of options to bring the pain. But this wasn't the only way they went after Quagga. In a previous video, I highlighted Dwayne Vermeulen's usual role in the South African defence. His job isn't to make tackles or even turnovers, it's just to organise everyone else. He stands behind the ruck and barks instructions, telling everyone where to be, adding an element of Captain America to his usual fourish ways. We saw Wales, coached by Warren Gatland, who's now in charge of the Lions, spend the semi-final targeting him. Before any set move they had planned, they sent a runner right at Vermeulen, so he was on the floor and hence couldn't use his psychic powers to predict the move. My theory, at least, was that Quagga Smith was getting the 8 shirt because he could better fill that role, the defensive organiser, than Jasper Wiese or Dan du Plessis. He's a sharp reader of the game, and we saw him filling in whenever the Springboks were on defence, lurking behind the ruck and trying to read the Lions' attack. However, whilst he might have the intellect for it, Quagga as yet lacks the patience. We see him a few phases in a row behind the ruck, but he's too easily drawn in by a real long shot at a turnover, instead of just playing his role. Now watch Ali Price. He scans and looks for Smith, spots him on the floor, at which point he's happy for the Lions to go to the backs in the 22 for the first time. Henshaw tries to cut back in the same space that he did here for Tyg Burns' try against Wales in the Six Nations, and whilst he makes no ground, Smith is once again dragged into the ruck and the Lions go wide once again, almost getting outside them. The Bok beacon knocked out. It was a weird game for Quagga Smith. I think he performed about as well as it's humanly possible to when you have 15 people trying to personally and viciously beat up and bully you. In that way, it reminded me of taking my GCSEs. But it's no real surprise that Erasmus and Nineba have seen this as a risk not worth carrying on into the second test, dropping him to the bench. The Lions did have another few sharp moves, but the Springboks had Lakanyu Am. Warren Gatland spent the last 2 years plotting and planning and devising ways to open up the South African defence, but it must be infuriating for him when Am sees through them in seconds. There's no hint of this move working. Am just reads it and kills it, alongside Elliot Daly, turning him into Elliot Rarely. This is the Lions getting closer. It's a nice move. The idea is to confuse Colby and bring up LaRue from the backfield, hopefully giving them a clear run-in. These first 2 passes and 5 runners are just to fix everyone but Am, and then Conan runs a hard line right at the centre, and Watson floats behind, but Bigger threads it through instead to Curry. Now I think this move should look something like this. Curry fixes Am, Watson drifts round and fixes Colby, Bigger loops, and then this becomes a 3-on-1 against LaRue. Instead, Am gives Curry a few yards. This may seem counterintuitive, but it gets him into a position where he can both block the pass and make the tackle. Am's defending in 3D. The Lions cross the gain line, but this is no longer a try-scoring chance. He's lost the battle to win a little bit of the war that they ultimately lost. Well, you could say they lost anyway. This is a free war series, so they could yet win it. The point is, right, Lakanyu Am's really good. And Lakanyu Am's also really alert, and that helps South Africa shift things in the second half. As I've discussed many times, the Springbok game plan is about momentum. It's about always being the team on top. in control, regardless of who has the ball. Their kicking is about keeping that up. It's normally from Faf de Klerk at the base of the ruck. This gives South Africa the biggest chase possible. They can fire forwards in after the winger makes the tackle to try and disrupt and win the ball back. Aggression, momentum, eventually possession. Hugely effective at various points in this first half in particular. However, on Saturday, in that second half, we also got a rare insight into how they kick when the opposition managed to wrestle that momentum off them. The Springboks, a team built for the purists, instead went all French and decided to try and create chaos. The Erasmus Nene Baticket's whole deal is thrifting old tactics into something shiny and new. So it's about time they got hold of one of rugby's oldest ideas, kicking to disorganise a defence. It's something the 2015 era All Blacks did phenomenally and consistently well, and has been around since genuinely probably the dawn of the game. And to the 2021 Springboks, it looks something like this. Instead of de Klerk kicking down the tram lines, Leroux slots in and hangs it cross-field. Only Mapimpi is following the ball, but, and this is the Razzie part, close behind him are Du Toit and Diolande, not looking for the ball, not looking to run support lines, not even looking for the tap back. They're looking at the clear out, giving South Africa a quick ball and hence the Lions' defence no time to align. Now, if you rewind, the moment the kick goes in the air, Am starts jogging cross-field away from the ball, expecting Mapimpi to regather it. Am is setting up to attack afterwards, the next phase. The ball is won, Leroux calls it out, and the Lions defence is still organising. Because Am is the only player who got into a realistic position to attack, the entire Lion defence kind of honeypots on him, and Pollard can spin a pearler pass to Khaleesi, who charges down the wing. Van der Merwe doing well to watch Colby so the captain can't unleash everyone's favourite dancing jelly bean. The point of focus is changing repeatedly on the fly for South Africa, and they then try to run a deceptively complicated play. Etzebeth to Pollard, the two front rowers here look like the only options he can pass to, but they then split up so he can thread the ball between them to Leroux, except Leroux doesn't get to anticipate how Marks and Maho are going to split, and the pass can't find, and the pass goes behind everyone. The Lions' defence, in an instant, has to change from drifting towards the touchline to sprinting in a straight line, and I figure this causes Watson and Price to do the kind of, the power slide move from Mario Kart, to just hit that speed boost and accelerate straight past the ball. Daly still has no bones after Am's tackle from the first half, so falls over, and suddenly chaos has paid off. Chaos has worked. Du Toit finds Mapimpi, and now Makazole Mapimpi, right? And I want to take a second. Makazole Mapimpi was involved about 5 times on Saturday, and I genuinely think every involvement he had was close to perfect. On every touch, he possibly could have done no more whatsoever. And this is one such example. It's a really smart kick, really well weighted, and when Du Toit narrowly misses it, he follows up himself before sneakily offloading it backwards to that little shit himself, Faf de Klerk, for the Springboks' only try of the game. The Lions' try, on the other hand, came from a really, really well-worked maul. Mostert contests, and the Lions drive right into him. Competing at the line-out always weakens that area of the maul's defence. The Boks flood numbers into support, at which point the Lions turn and splinter, spinning the maul. Only Khaleesi spots it, but Curry contorts his body to make sure he and Marks can only hit him. Alan Wynne-Jones then twists that trio into the main maul, meaning Itoje can pick his moment to splinter off, once the maximum number of Springboks are distracted, carefully taking some contact to make sure it's still the same maul. This is the point where the backs pile in. The forwards are basically cancelling out the South African equivalents, so Henshaw and Van der Merwe provide the final oomph to power Cowan-Dickie over the line, who becomes the first man for double barrel name to ever score a test try for the Lions. There's a stat to impress your friends. I presume some of you have them. I only have GCSEs. Just as 80% of Britain and Ireland surprise themselves by cheering for a guy who literally plays for Exeter, one of the great joys of a Lions tour is getting to shout for players at whom you normally want to snarl and jeer. And so, seeing Mario Itoje pull off one of the best games of his career on one of the few games where I'm allowed to cheer for him every 4 years was an unbelievable delight. Itoje spent the Six Nations on the wrong end of the whistle, but from minute 1 on Saturday, he was tuned in exactly to how Nick Berry was refereeing the game. This intervention is about as legal as a referee allows it to be, and Itoje walks the line perfectly. This, genuinely quite match-saving moment, is, if we go by the app that about 40% of us have downloaded, totally illegal. And worse, even if Itoje was legal, it's not even a penalty. Khaleesi is not touching the ball, yet is penalised for holding on. But this is consistent with how Berry refereed all day, and Itoje paints a picture so convincing, you wonder why his chosen art was poetry. Before getting mad over this as well, I also know Mostert's clear out here is completely reckless and illegal, so just kind of shake out, there's a penalty against the Boks. Both teams had moments of getting away with murder, but Mario Itoje brought out a machine gun and unloaded straight into the heart of every breakdown. It's not cheating if you get away with it, and Mario Itoje knew just how to get away with it. Itoje did do legal things here. His final turnover was superb, clean, and once again, match-winning. But being a pest is his job, and he got under the South African skin without needing to be physical, without needing to try and dominate them. Though the Lions did manage some physical domination at points. They matched the Boks, especially helped by a weird backfired decision by Nene at half-time. The bomb squad idea, loading the bench with game-changing big lads to melt the opposition like an ice cream under Frans Malherbe's toasted butt cheeks, won South Africa the World Cup because they used it the same way they used the ball, to create and sustain momentum. Every time the Springboks brought on a full front row at once under Erasmus up until now, they've done so immediately before a scrum. This gave the new front row a chance to assert themselves, to create momentum, to smash everything in front of them, to absolutely destroy them. Instead, the Springboks brought them on at half-time to try and make that statement, further the dominance. Whenever the first scrum came, they'd be ready, but the first scrum of the second half did not take place until 47 minutes. Allowing for stoppages, in real time, that was 11 minutes after their new front row, their best front row, took to the pitch. This doesn't create the same sense of occasion, nor does it allow the pack to pile literally everything they have physically into one single scrum to lay down a marker, especially because Kitchoff, Marks and Malherbe had ended as South Africa kicked off, straight to the Lions, who then replied with this kick, which we've already seen, resulting in this, which we've already seen, resulting in a try. There we are, covered it. Right, brilliant. Basically, Erasmus normally uses his bench to make a statement, but this week he was just shouting into the wind, probably still through that face mask. You could say he was tweeting from his account with 0 followers instead of his one with 37,000. Incidentally, right? 37,000, I've just realised I have more Twitter followers than Rassie Erasmus. This is incorrect and everyone should amend this immediately. Anyone watching this who doesn't follow Rassie Erasmus, go and do that. This is wrong. I also have more followers, I've just realised, than Sia Khaleesi. This is even more incorrect. Unfollow me. Unfollow me. This is wrong. Follow Sia Khaleesi as well, at least. This is weirdly stressful. I should get back to the video, but not there's that much more to say though. This was one for the purists, but it was also a pretty pure distillation of what we're going to get in the next 2 tests. 3 Saturdays that combine cutting-edge tactics with shithouse violence so neatly you'd think Harjay Snyman joined your chess club. Next week, the Lions could wrap up the series, leaving South Africa with 12 years before they get another shot. Or the Springboks may roll back, pissed off and ready to kill. It's a series for the purists, the ruckphobics, those that have never looked at that app, and everyone else in between. First test out of the way, 2 more to go, potentially decider coming up at this weekend. Thank you for watching that, I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you everyone that's supporting on Patreon. It makes a huge difference and I hugely appreciate that as well. I am trying to turn these around as quickly as possible, but there's a lot to talk about, a lot to cover, and there's a lot I'm trying to get through. I am again going to be on the Springbok Saturday show if anyone's going to tune into that on the South African Rugby Union's social media stuff. And beyond that, I will see you next week for the second test between the Lions and the Springboks, which we're actually through the test series. It's incredible. I don't know where time goes. All right, I'll see you then. Thank you for watching. Bye.
Otherwise, I just thought the other tweet was just, the Lions really, I thought, deserve to win. They're going through the same protocols as us, same COVID protocols. They're far away from home. So I think it was only those 2 tweets, and then obviously, I did retweet a few things that a few guys that I thought were spot on, like last year, a guy like Squidge Rugby. I enjoy him, for example, and when something makes sense to me, I like to retweet it.